Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a piece of tech that's trying to solve a massive headache for developers everywhere. It's a database called ArcadeDB, and its big claim is that you don't have to choose between speed, flexibility, and power anymore. So if you're a developer, you know this feeling, right? You're spinning up a new app. It needs social features, it's got to have complex search, and hey, you want to sprinkle in some AI. So what database do you reach for? Do you go with a document database for that nice, flexible schema? A graph database for all those tricky relationships? Or a vector database for the AI stuff? It always feels like you have to make a compromise.
And what's the usual answer? Well, we just use all of them, right? You kind of stitch together a document store and a graph database and maybe a search engine on the side. But that's where the real nightmare begins. You get these data silos, the complexity just goes through the roof, and you're always playing this balancing act with performance between all these different systems.
But what if you didn't have to choose? What if you didn't have to make that trade-off? Well, that's the exact promise of ArcadeDB. It's part of a whole new generation of databases designed to tackle this problem head-on. So what is this thing exactly? Well, at its core, ArcadeDB is what's called a multi-model database, and that just means it's built from the ground up to handle graphs, documents, key value, you name it, all inside one single engine. But here's the real kicker. It claims to do all of this extremely fast. I think the best way to picture it is like a Swiss Army knife, but for your data. You know, instead of carrying around a separate screwdriver, a separate can opener, and a separate pair of scissors, you've just got one awesome integrated tool that can do pretty much everything you need it to. If you boil it all down, its value really stands on three main pillars. First, that multi-model flexibility we've been talking about. Second, a super high-performance engine, and we'll get to how in just a second. And third, something called native graph power. Now, that last one, that is a huge deal. So you hear this term native graph, but what does it really mean? Well, think about a classic SQL database. To connect two pieces of data, you have to do a join operation. And as your tables get bigger, those joins get slower and slower. In a native graph database like ArcadeDB, relationships aren't just an abstract idea. They're actual physical pointers between your records. That means hopping from one node to another is unbelievably fast. And, this is the magic part, that speed doesn't degrade, even if your database grows to be absolutely massive. All right, so let's pop the hood and take a quick tour of what this thing can actually do, because this multi-model capability is where ArcadeDB really starts to shine. Okay, now take a look at this. If you've ever used a relational or a document database, most of this is going to look super familiar, right? A table is a collection, a row is a document. Easy enough. But now look at that very last row. Relationship. That's the game changer. It's not something you have to figure out on your own. It's a first-class citizen baked right into the database. First up, at its foundation, it's a powerful document database. So you get all that flexibility you want from a modern NoSQL store. You can have nested data, you can store JSON-like documents, you don't need a rigid schema. It's perfect for apps that need to evolve quickly. So check, it does documents beautifully. It also handles the simplest model of all, key value. And you might think that's basic, but having a super high-speed key value store built right in is incredibly powerful. We're talking about things like caching, user sessions, anytime you just need a ridiculously fast lookup by a unique key. It's a huge win for performance. And now we get to its main event, the graph model. This is where that native graph superpower we were just talking about really comes to life. Because those relationships are physical links, it can map out incredibly complex, interconnected data and just fly through it. We're talking social networks, fraud detection, supply chain logistics, stuff that would bring a traditional database to its knees. And finally, this is absolutely crucial in the age of AI, it supports vector models. Now, it uses a really efficient algorithm to do this, but all you really need to know is that it's insanely good at finding the nearest neighbors or the most similar items in a giant sea of data. This is the exact tech that powers things like semantic search and recommendation engines. So it's not just a database, it's a core building block for modern AI features. Okay, hold on. A database that handles documents and key value and native graphs and vectors, there's got to be a catch, right? There must be some kind of performance trade-off. How in the world can it be fast at all of those things? Well, the secret sauce is a pretty clever approach that you could call low-level Java. See, on the left, you've got your typical Java application, which is constantly creating and then throwing away objects. This forces something called the garbage collector to run all the time, which slows things down. ArcadeDB, on the right, is designed to avoid that almost completely. It's all about working with the hardware, not against it, to squeeze out every last drop of performance.
All right, so the tech is really cool and the performance story is solid, but what good is any of that if it's a total pain to actually use? Let's talk about getting it running and how you actually talk to it. And this is the part you're going to love. It is ridiculously simple to get started. It is literally a 3-step process. You download the file, you unzip it, and you run one single command in your terminal. That is it. Boom, you're up and running. And once it's running, you don't have to go learn some brand new proprietary query language. This is huge. It speaks your language. If you know SQL, you can use SQL. If you're a graph person and you like Gremlin or Cypher, you're all set. It even supports the MongoDB query language and GraphQL. It meets you right where you are. And maybe the best news of all, there is absolutely zero barrier to entry. The Community Edition is totally free and open source. You can download it right now, use it for any project you want, even a commercial one, and it won't cost you a thing.
So, if you take one thing away from this explainer, let it be this. You might not have to compromise anymore. ArcadeDB makes a really compelling case that you can get the flexibility of documents, the power of a native graph, and modern AI capabilities all in a single high-performance engine. And that really leaves us with a fascinating question to chew on. For years, the trend has been to use specialized databases for everything, but are we starting to see a shift back? Could the future of data architecture really be a single, powerful, unified engine that does it all? It's an exciting thought. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.